KSL Broadcast House. This is Sunday Edition with the Deseret News and KSL.
Good morning. Welcome to Sunday Edition. I'm Dave McCann. Election Day is coming up in a couple of weeks, and a lot of Utahns apparently need to be reminded because folks in our state just don't seem to vote. In fact, Utah has one of the lowest voter turnout rates in the entire country. Peter Reichard is the president of the Utah Foundation, just finished a research project on our voting habits. Good morning. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. This
is a patriotic state. Why doesn't that carry over into us going to vote for public office?
Well, that's the big question. Why? We are ranked 39th in the nation as of the 2016 general election in terms of voter turnout. And we have found a pattern of uncompetitive races here in Utah. And and what we mean by competitive is very uncompetitive. We're talking about 30% margins. And so 71% of the races in 2016 were won by a margin of 30% or more, or were uncontested.
So the fence sitters are like, they don't need me. Like in the 3rd congressional district, it's 5-1 Republicans registered versus Democrats. So Republicans and Democrats may not feel needed on election day?
The sense of urgency may not be there. And it could be that sense of, well, I know what the outcome is going to be. Yeah. It could be a sense of, I'm content. I don't need to, things are going well. I don't need to vote. It could be just a declining sense of civic duty with regard to voting. But it's not obvious that competitiveness is the only factor. And I'll give you an example of how that may be the case. If you look at the 2016 election, 2 of our neighboring states, actually, where there were battleground states, Nevada and Arizona, actually had lower turnout than we did.
Really?
So it's a bit of a conundrum.
What is mail-in voting doing to, are more people more apt to vote that way?
What's really interesting is if you look at over time, and particularly in recent times, we've made things easier to register, easier to vote, and yet going back in the 60s and 70s, we had a much higher turnout back then. And I mean, you'd have a 70% turnout in 1976. So.
Well, what reforms are underway that might get people a little more active?
Well, I'm not in a position to judge whether they would be effective in getting people more active.
But we're trying.
But there are a couple of initiatives out there that will affect the way we vote. And one of them is kind of a revived initiative, the Count My Vote initiative, which is meant to address the current system in which we have the delegates, for the most part, choosing the candidates for the primaries. And the other one is addressing the way we do our redistricting. Yeah. And so I'm not sure what effect they will have. It's hard to say. But they are very significant changes that we think citizens should pay close attention to.
It doesn't bode well for the election coming up, but there are some intriguing races coming for 2018 where voter turnout in a non-presidential election. We'll see if your research holds up and what that shows about us as we go to the polls here coming up and again in a couple years. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And welcome to the state.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Well, seeing a wrong